mentioned in the legislative update that you were going to introduce legislation to ensure that African American history was being taught in every county and hold superintendent pay. You found out that's not the case. Please tell me more about the bill that you want to introduce.
We've had a law on the books since 1994 that requires instruction on African American history and the history of the Holocaust. And we have an African American history task force that works with the Commissioner of Education. They have visited and surveyed all 67 counties and indicate that only 11 counties are actually providing the instruction. Now, there are counties that celebrate Dr. King's birthday and think that that complies with the law. Well, a celebration is not instruction. You can go to a celebration and know no more about whoever is being honored than you did when you got there. And so what the task force has done is to say this is how you're supposed to do it. It's supposed to be something that spans 180 days, which is the length of the school year, not something that you do exclusively in February. It's supposed to be taught in all subject areas. Certainly we know that history and social studies would be appropriate places, but you can also incorporate it in, if you're teaching English, you can teach about the writings of Zora Neale Hurston or Toni Morrison. So what we're after is having this instruction interwoven throughout the curriculum. And because we only have 11 counties that are actually doing that and complying with the law, which has been on the books for 27 years, I have introduced legislation because there has to be some repercussion. There has to, people respond if there is repercussion, and there hasn't been any. For 27 years they haven't done it, and so what? That's the attitude. So the legislation would mean that the salary of the school superintendent in any district in the 67 counties that can't demonstrate that there has been instruction in African American history over the curriculum, as I mentioned before, that salary would be withheld. Now, I don't anticipate that the superintendent is going to allow his or her salary to be jeopardized. So what I think is going to happen is that the superintendents will get with the school principals, the assistant principals, the instructional leaders, and say this is a requirement and this is what we need to do, and let's get it done.
How can a parent or any other individual check to see if their schools are teaching this?
School districts submit reports to show that they're teaching the history of the Holocaust and African American history. And you may remember, it's been maybe 3 years ago now, in Palm Beach County, you had a parent who called a school principal and asked, how are you teaching the history of the Holocaust? The principal's response was, we have information and learning material and activities, but we don't mandate it because I'm not sure that the Holocaust really occurred. That was the response of the principal.
Oh.
Yes. So the principal was removed and eventually terminated. The parents were up in arms. There's a sizable Jewish population in Palm Beach County. So the school board dismissed the principal. And so it's that kind of vigilance and staying aware of what students are being taught that parents have to exercise. And so the same applies for African American history.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I know that my child happened to learn about the Tulsa Race Massacre. We celebrated the 100th anniversary of that. He learned about it on TikTok. So, props to the TikTokers. They did a wonderful job. I don't know that that's really where he should have learned about the Tulsa Race Massacre.
Well, one of the things that you have to understand is that there's a lot of denial about what happened to African Americans. And now we have a prohibition against talking about race and racism in our schools.
How does this law that has been on the books, you said 27
27 years.
So this is Florida statute.
Yes.
And it's been on the books for 27 years, and yet just this summer, Governor DeSantis kind of backdoored a rule from the State Board of Education to say that teachers could not discuss slavery or racism in any manner other than as a quote aberration of our founding, here again air quotes around our founding principles. So how does that square with this law that's actually on the books that mandates that schools teach all of African American history?
Well, I'm going to be advocating for the law. We have to follow the law. It's in our books, it's in our statutes, and we need to follow the law. We all should be governed by the rule of law. And while we don't want to face some of the dark parts of our past, we can't rewrite history. This is what happened. And I'm not a revisionist. So that's why I have taken the steps that I have taken. I've introduced this bill, which has not gotten a hearing. This is the second session that I've introduced it. It's not gotten a hearing. So I'm making people throughout the state of Florida aware that this bill has been introduced. It has not been placed on the agenda for discussion. We've had no opportunity for people to come and give testimony and then to have a vote on the bill. If you don't put it on the agenda and it's not heard, then it never gets to the floor for a vote. So that's a convenient way to sidestep what needs to happen. And so I'm going to be working to get more people involved, to have more voices heard, and to raise the issue. Just like in Palm Beach, as I said, the whole community was up in arms. So we're going to have people throughout the state of Florida saying we want this bill placed on